Tens of millions of families with Alzheimer's disease and dementia all over the world, including our family. We are Alz In The Fam. I'm Allan Fair.
And I'm Poli Fair Noise. We're siblings, we are parents, but we're also caregivers.
This is our podcast. This is our support group. Welcome to our family. Alzheimer's sucks, but this family lives, laughs, and learns as we fight for a cure. Welcome. Hey, Poli. Hey, Boni.
Hey, Allan.
Hey, Allan.
Happy New Year. Yeah, this is the first episode of Alz In The Fam in 2021. And it's a good one because we have a great guest that we interviewed.
We interviewed Chris Kondracki. He is the owner of a company called Always Best Care in Loudoun, Virginia, which is close to where we live in the USA. And we talk about his services, which are home aid services for seniors with disabilities, either physical or mental. And it's a really nice episode.
Great. Here's that interview with Chris now.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hey, Boni.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
So we're very excited today to have a guest, and this guest is a personal friend of mine as well as a professional friend of mine. His name is Chris Kondracki, and he is the owner and president of Always Best Care. It's a senior home services company located in Loudoun, Virginia, which is near where we live in the United States. And we are really pleased to have him to ask questions about his services and how dementia and Alzheimer's patients and their families can access this kind of care. And so thank you. Welcome to the podcast, Chris. Really appreciate you coming out today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm just going to get right into it a little bit. Chris, you know, there is a distinction between your services because they are really non-medical services. So it's a companion care and then a placement services in addition to that. And also what we want to say home helper services and there's a distinction there. Can you talk a little bit about what your services are and how that plays out as a differentiator from home health services in a medical setting?
Sure. Home health care in the medical setting, I'll start with that. Those are the folks that will come to your home. It's usually a nurse to provide usually occupational therapy or physical therapy for you that has been prescribed by a doctor. And they are there only for a short amount of time, usually about an hour. They can provide the nurses can do wound treatment. They can give you medication and check you over, and then also do the physical therapy type of exercises with you. But then they leave. Home care, which we call it, we do personal care or companion care, and that's non-medical. And a lot of people think that sometimes that the personal care is medical care. It is not. We're not allowed to provide a good medication, but we can help somebody get out of the bed to transfer them. We help them with incontinence issues. They could be bed bound, they could be wheelchair bound, any number of issues that requires somebody to be next to them by their side to help them up and down. And then the companion care and the home helper services is something akin to someone coming to your house and providing, maybe cook a meal for you, socialize with you, maybe take you to the grocery store, help you pick out items, open the mail, read the mail for you. Those kind of services that you physically do not touch somebody in a kind of intimate way, I'd say.
Yeah, I really feel like when we were looking for help for my mom, that this was the kind of care that we needed first in dementia. So my mom was very healthy and remains very healthy, didn't need medications, didn't need a lot of aid in the activities of daily living from a physical perspective, but really needed watching in a way that we couldn't provide 24 hours. So getting this kind of care was really a critical piece of keeping her in her home for a longer amount of time and giving us peace of mind. And we really didn't know where to start on how to access that kind of care.
Yeah, Bonnie, I just want to point out, Chris, your services sound like exactly what we needed in the beginning of our journey with Alzheimer's with our mom, because she would resent care that she didn't need, right? And a person she didn't know coming in. So a companion really is what she needed. I think we went a little too early to a more robust level of care, I guess. We didn't have a nurse come in, but we had someone come in, and she really kind of resented it. She's like, I don't need this. But she did need someone to cook her a meal once in a while. Like you said, go through the mail, all those things. I was like, yes, that's exactly it. I think we went too early for my mom with getting the kind of care she had. But when's the right time to bring someone in, do you think? I would love to hear your expertise in that area.
Well, typically, probably in your situation, I don't think you started too early. You maybe actually started too late, because if you start early with somebody, you don't have to have somebody in their house 7 days a week, 5 days a week, whatever it is, all day long. If it's just a couple hours a day, 1 or 2 days a week, you can start off slowly, and by then building on and adding folks, or adding time to covering the person that has dementia. Usually in the early stages of dementia, as you know, it's a lot of cueing and a lot of reminding. So dementia in itself is a special type of personal care that we cover, so that the caregiver is right by their side usually, or watching out for them for safety purposes, and then also making sure that they don't wander off or get into trouble in any way. They may direct them on how to get dressed in the morning, or in the afternoon. They may get a little more agitated to calm them down and settle them down through dinner, and then they might leave. So the earlier the better, really. But start slow. You know, 1 or 2 days a week is all about it. You need a couple hours.
Yeah, Chris, you pointed out that maybe we waited too long, and I think that's part of the. Now that you say that, I think maybe that was part of the issue, because my mom could never sort of get to know the person and develop a relationship. It seemed like they were brand new every time they came to her house, and brings up another issue about how I imagine a very experienced helper would know how to combat that. But my mom locked people out when they came to help her, and they'd knock on the door. Oh, I brought you some groceries. She's like, I don't know you. You can't come in. Do you see that, or how do you deal with that?
All the time. It happens all the time, and that's commonplace. Usually with folks, a lot of people, they've been living on their own for several years, maybe 20, 30 years living on their own. And then all of a sudden the kids decide, hey, mom needs some help because she's has dementia. And they put somebody in the house, and they're like, hey, I don't need this. I've been living for 20 years by myself. I don't need any help at all. I'm doing fine.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, there's a lot of resentment there. And that's the typical story.
Yeah.
That folks just don't want somebody else coming in their house because, one, they don't want a stranger, and two, they don't need help. So there's always going to be a pushback. And that's why starting early is better.
I think we had a much better experience when we found someone and were able, because of the person's personality and relationship to my mom, to frame it in the idea that this was my mother's friend or our friend who was coming either to get her, take her for a walk, help her. And that worked for a while, much better than where we had done what Polly was saying earlier and tried to get actual help in. So I see where starting early, starting on a friendship basis with more benign companion, I think, as opposed to assistant, is a real key way of framing it with at least our mom.
Chris, who is it that finds you first? Is it more often the children of the person who needs care? Is it the spouse? Does it skew toward one way or another? while our mother lived alone, in other situations that I've been in, it's been, and married seniors. And I've seen the challenge of the children being convincing the healthy senior to take action to help the spouse that's in need.
Well, it can vary, but certainly the spouse of someone who has dementia will be someone who will contact us. Usually, and also with the adult children, they're usually the ones that try to reach out first. If there are children involved, if the parents don't have any kids, then the spouse is probably the one who's going to reach out. If there are kids involved, then the kids are probably going to reach out, especially if they live close by, because they're the ones that are being called constantly to come over and help out, and taking up their time that they have their own families and dealing with their own lives. They don't really have a plan to help go back and help mom and dad, every other day of the week. So the children can be also the ones who call. And then if someone lives alone, it could be a neighbor. It could be someone in a church member, realizing that the person's struggling with dementia, and they might call somebody to help come in and start talking.
So the distinction I'm hearing is that you're not saying it's usually the patient themselves. It's usually someone that's in their life in some way or another that's making that original call for them. Am I right with that?
Pretty much 99% of the time with dementia folks, it is not the person with dementia calling.
Yeah, it really is hard to imagine someone saying, I'm really noticing I'm starting to lose my marbles. Maybe I should call someone and get some help for myself. So yeah, I haven't met anyone who's done it that way. That's for sure.
Or I went and looked into where did I put the number? I forgot where I put the number. So.
Yeah. And staying with that though, I think it's interesting that you said, it's someone who's close by and kind of sees what's going on, because I also think, there's the case like us where, and Poli and I had this discussion many times before we got help. Do we just wait until the bad thing happens? And, I know we had a recent experience with Chris, with my mother-in-law, in a medical situation where we needed help on an emergency basis. I mean, there was a clear defining event, and thank you. Chris was a savior. I'm going to recommend his company to anybody who's local. The way that he responded, it was so fast, so complete, and gave us so much good advice. So,
and Bonnie, what day was that you called?
Yeah, let's talk about it. The day before Thanksgiving in the evening,
right.
And we had services in place that very next day, including equipment and staff. So
let's point out during COVID.
Yes, during COVID, right?
Let's just
the height of COVID.
It's got to be an exacerbating factor.
Right.
Yeah. So going from that extreme of extremes to back to dementia and this thing, do you find that a lot of people in that area are having the discussions that Poli and I were having in the background of, what do we do? Do we wait for the bad thing to happen, or what can we do? What can we offer? How can we get some relief and some safety for her?
Yes, usually that is happening in the background. If it's the spouse with no kids, the spouse is probably talking to other people about it. If the kids are involved and it's multiple kid family, I'm sure they're all having, everyone who's interested in helping mom and dad is going to be involved, trying to get together and help out and kind of decide who's going to do what, who's going to do when. If somebody can't do it because they're not local, too far away, then how can they support the group? And work things out. It's a slow process when that starts to happen, and I think that's where people stutter the most, and that's the problem. They get paralyzed with all the information, and don't move forward.
Yeah, and then when you meet a little bit of resistance from your loved one, it makes it easy to stop. So what's your process? So I call and I'm like, hey, I got my mom. I don't know what's going on. what's your intake process to help someone? Because I feel like even having gone through the process, when we were going over notes and things like that, we were like, wow, I wish we had had a guide to tell us, what's available to us and what to do.
Well, the process would be somebody would find us through friends or the internet, webpage, a case manager at a hospital or a skilled nursing facility, and reach out and contact us. And that's when we start and initiate the process with potential client. We just take some basic information on the phone, but schedule an appointment, a meeting to go out and talk with the family members, whoever involved, the responsible parties, and sit down and talk with them and find out what the situation is, find out what the home environment is, preferably with the person with dementia there so that they can be observed as well. And then with that, also send in a nurse that does a physical type of assessment of the situation. Some simple tests for dementia, trying to figure out what stage. But if you've already been to the doctor, or you might have a general practitioner, or even a neurologist or a psychiatrist involved already. So we would be looking for notes from them as well, medication levels that someone might be on. And then from there, we would devise a plan of a schedule, more or less, of how many days, how many hours you would want someone to come in and help, that would help out the family and the person, which would benefit the most.
What about those who are skeptical about how expensive it is? I mean, so we're located in the DC metropolitan area, which I believe has a reputation, perhaps justifiably so, of being among the most expensive markets in the United States for healthcare. For a caregiver who might be concerned that, I simply can't afford that. Is there hope? Is that a misunderstanding? Are there payment options available to them that they're unaware of?
Yeah, there's certainly a long list of other payment options that are available, that are out there for folks to pay for these type of services. We here, Always Best Care in Loudoun, we mostly cover, or 100% cover, private pay clients, which means you're paying out of pocket. And that could be paid from a long-term care insurance policy, but generally someone's coming up with the money from their own pocket, let's say. The other side would be a government-supported effort. Medicaid might step in. In many states, they have their own state-run programs where the funds can be accessed for certain levels of care and certain many hours a week, a month. There's self-guided care programs in several states. There's one here in Virginia where they will give you a lump sum of money, and it's up to you to decide how you're going to spend that money on your care. When we talk to folks about funds and pricing, it's when you go back and think about it, that right now probably the average caregiver out there is making less than the person that's in the warehouse at a Costco. That's difficult to find caregivers that will work. It honestly is. So relative to other things, it's really not expensive. One of the issues that comes up that is truly eye-opening for a lot of people is that when this happens, you now are an employer. You're employing us to help you out. And most people all their lives have never been the employer. So they don't know what it is for employee taxes. They don't know what workers' compensation is all about. They don't know enough to cover how many different policies of insurance you have to cover. Even COVID now has been taken out of our general policies, and you have to have a separate rider for that, for infectious diseases. So I try to tell folks that they're now the employer, and think about it from that standpoint, is they've got to hire somebody who's going to come in on a regular basis, who's qualified to do it. And it's not going to be cheap, but it's not expensive.
So I want to make 2 points on here. One is that Chris provided us a list of potential services that we will put in the notes for the podcast so that you can,
Sure.
if you're listening and are interested in finding something, it'll be a resource for our listeners to try and access those that are in our area or in your area when you say state-run and local programs.
Mhm.
And the second piece is, I thought, a really compelling statement that you said on your notes back to me when we were going over what we might talk about was, when you talk about a rainy day fund, guess what? It's raining. And I really, that really kind of hit me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You waiting for it to get worse? It will, but
Yeah.
you're better off getting things in place now. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's usually something, we tell folks right off the bat, and seniors that, hey, they have saved money for a rainy day, and it's now raining, and they have to dig in. And no one wants to spend their savings and their money. That's true, especially for something like this, which they probably never thought of that they were going to need or wanted. We once had a client that had a wife that had late stage dementia, was caring for her, and they lived a very meager existence. And I went and met him, and he said they had no money for services. It was too expensive. And in conversation with him, after a little bit, we started talking about where he lived locally and what had happened. And he told me that he owned 137 acres of land in prime real estate area here in Loudoun County. So there is funds. He had it free and clear. He just didn't want to give it up. So there are a lot of places where there's money hiding to help pay for these type of services. It's just a matter of whether or not you're going to sacrifice it and give it up. And typically people don't give it up.
Well, I think at some point, we've recognized what a better quality of life it is for everyone involved, not just our loved ones, but for us as caretakers to have that expertise to not only to care for them, but to give us advice on next steps and to give us a professional eye on what's going on with our loved one, our person. Mm-hmm. That's so valuable outside of even the care that we're giving. So I'm going to say do it early, like you're saying, Chris, because it's been very valuable to us in many ways.
And that's one thing about our services. It's not only helping the client, the person with the dementia, it's helping the family. We help educate the family in any way we can. We're constantly in contact with them, of course, about what's happening day to day. But we also feed them literature, information about what's going on, services that are out there in the community. There may be a lecture here or there in the community that we might think is relevant to them. So we'll send them, an invitation to that seminar or whatever it may be. So we're helping the family just as much as we're helping the client.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to switch gears for a minute, and I'm just going to ask about, going back to what Polly said with a difficult client. Mm-hmm. And, literally our mother would lock the person out and not let them come. So tell me a little bit about how you'd manage that. Now, I know how you managed with my mother-in-law, who is not a dementia patient, but is a difficult patient, and had a little bit of difficulty with one of her helpers. You were able to swap her out and get somebody else in pretty quickly for us. Again, thank you so much. But what are some of the tricks for someone like that? I mean, where, we thought too early, but really too late, and had the wrong kind of care initially. But what do you do? What do you do when you need the help and it's not working? What are the strategies? What would you, how do you manage when the patient or the client, although, that's a question, who's the client? Are we the client, or is the patient the client? And so what do you do if the person who's receiving the care locks out the caregiver?
Well, those type of situations happen. There are a lot of times the person is defensive and will do things like that. Even going as far, maybe if they're aggressive or they become aggressive, they can swing and try to hit the caregiver as well. That happens all the time. Caregivers are very fast when that happens. They try to step back as best they can. It is, it's the caregiver and the training that we've worked with the caregiver, the experiences that they've had that usually determine the outcome of those type of situations. The best thing to do in a situation like that, in which you have somebody who's either aggressive or anti-care, is to redirect and keep redirecting and keep redirecting and keep redirecting. And you keep trying to redirect as long as you can until you can turn it around. Someone might be in an argument with the caregiver. So the caregiver says, okay, and steps in another room, waits 2 or 3 minutes, comes around the other side of the door and say, hey, we're going to the party tonight. We need to get dressed. And off they go to the party. Everything's changed.
I've done that myself.
Exactly.
And you learn you can't win an argument with someone with dementia.
That's correct. And so in general, if for folks that are just starting with something that might have a serious case of dementia, you got to go along with the flow of what's in their mind. Not what you're going to think, not what your response is going to be, as long as they're safe. You don't want to do anything dangerous, but just go with whatever they're thinking about. If they're talking about when they're playing soccer as a kid, okay, well, talk about playing soccer as a kid. Although it might not make sense to you, it does to them.
Chris, you sent us ahead of time a list of 9 things you might use to convince a client, the person who is who needs care, that they should accept care. And I thought they're fantastic. I don't know if you want to highlight a few of them for us or you want me to read them out, but I thought they were great. I wish I had that list when we were trying to convince my mom, although with dementia, it's hard to make that convincing stick. I mean, they might agree in the moment, but would you want to tell us a few of those, the ones that seem to work best? So you said you might point out to them that they're alone for several hours during the day or night. So and maybe you wrote these for the children or spouse of the person needing care, but they were great.
What's one that sticks out to you, Polly?
Yeah.
You use a cane, walker, wheelchair to help with balance or walking. What happens if that goes away? Somewhere along, I saw somebody said, like a spa thing. This is a person who's going to give you a shower or a bath in a very spa-like manner, I guess.
Yeah, dementia, they're both sex are involved, but usually for the women, to convince someone to get care, if you tell them it's about going to the beauty salon, going to the spa for a day to start care, that is very acceptable to them, and they'll take it on, and you'll start, and then you can start off with care. Along. But someone with a cane, walker, it's time to start thinking about, are they going to be okay? If they have those and dementia, then certainly you need to start thinking about bringing care. If that person can't cook their own meals, certainly. If they can't bathe, if someone hasn't taken a bath in 3 weeks, and they start to stink really bad, and they're wearing the same clothes day in and day out, that's a sign it's probably time for care.
Yeah. You did mention one of the ways to convince a person they might accept care was that remember it's important to you that you stay in your own home, and this can be a way for you to stay in your own home. And I think that might be important to all of us. It will be to me.
Yeah, that was the one that stuck out to me too. It's important to you that you live independently, and this is a way for us to make that happen. I actually use that in my real estate business for my seniors that I work with too, when they're downsizing, and you can have that same type of resistance to giving up your home where you've raised your kids with the big yard and lots of bedrooms and steps. And we'll often have a conversation about, look, if you want to live by yourself outside of a facility for another 10 years, let's do it right now and find a place with no steps and a small yard or a condo where the exterior of your building is taken care of. And I think this is an evolution of that, by saying, hey, we're going to bring it now to the interior of your home by taking away, some of the activities of daily living that become very burdensome to someone who has dementia or any type of physical disability.
Correct.
So,
And if you're talking to your parents and they're adamant, you know they need help and they're adamant about staying in their home, well, okay, you have a choice. You can stay in your home and you get home care and they have to come in, or you're going to go and we're going to find an assisted living community for you to move into. If the person is anti-assisted living community for whatever reason, then their choice is to stay independent at home, but they have to have home care, and then they will be watched and be safe.
Yeah.
And then that leads into kind of the very last piece of what we were talking about, which is that while you provide the in-home care, you also do that next step of helping with referrals to people who are then going to be moving out of their home care and into a facility.
Mhm.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how that happens? And, are your clients usually ones that were home care and then are moving on, or are there two channels for that?
Well, sort of like the example I just gave, or they could be our clients. There's various different ways of how people are going to move into or go to an assisted living community. I wanted a distinction between an assisted living community and a long-term care facility. Assisted living communities, in all fairness, they're not prisons. It's not jail. You can come and go as you please. If you can still drive, well, by all means, bring your car, park it in front, and go out for your errands. Long-term care and facilities is more of what probably they're thinking about, where folks are bedbound or wheelchair bound, and they need nursing care 24/7. So we're providing our service for assisted living placement services is finding the right community for someone to move to from their house, that where they need the extra support during the day. And it could be as little as just getting a wake-up call, getting out of bed, or it could be someone that's wheelchair bound as well, to help out. So yes, we do provide those services.
That's a real distinction to think about in your conversations with your loved ones, I think, too, that I hadn't really delineated, even though being in it now, we understand it a lot better, which is those assisted living facilities are an interim step to a full-on care facility, and they still provide a lot of independence. Again, as an alternative to just moving to a regular condo that doesn't have any additional services.
Correct. And there are any number of levels of service you can get in an assisted living community. And that's why we help out, because you could sit there and spend hours and hours of your time researching what's the best assisted living community to move into, and just keep wasting your time and never really get to where you need to get going. In our services, I constantly go to assisted living communities on a regular basis, find out what's going on, find out who the employees are, management, staff, turnover ratios, to find out what's going on, hands on the ground kind of research that people just don't have time to do. And they can't go to 15 of these communities usually at the time they're looking. They just don't have that kind of time. So you're coming to someone like me, a professional that's already done all the legwork to put together the best 2 or 3 communities, take you to those communities, view them, take a tour, come home and make a decision on which one's going to be best for you. So along the way, we've already knocked out the ones that have no bearance of no reason you would ever move into any one of it, whether it be the cost is too low, cost is too high. You'd rather go to the Ritz-Carlton, or you don't have enough money. Maybe you need to go to a group home. So we'll find the right community for you. And it's not just based on how close it is to your family.
So I know we're getting close to the end of our time here.
Sure.
What do you want us to know that we didn't cover?
I've got an easier one for you.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Looking toward the future, is there anything in the form of innovation that excites you about healthcare in the future, whether it's through some of the promising therapies that are being developed, or the merging of technology to measure certain milestones. As you look toward the future, what do you think will be better than how it is right now?
As far as advancing in technology, I think what's going to be coming down the line that's going to be most useful is the monitoring of the individual in their home or somewhere remotely. For instance, let's use an example. You go to a hospital, you have a heart attack, all of a sudden you're plugged into 15 machines that go bing. There's somebody in a room watching you and 12 other people, all their machines, and everyone's watching to make sure nothing's going wrong. That kind of technology is going to come to the home on the individual person, where you're going to be measuring blood pressure, temperature, heart, blood sugar rates in a real-time environment, and that if something goes askew or something's out of whack, a bell's going to go off and someone's going to be calling you direct or emailing you of some sort and finding out what's going on with you personally. That's something that's probably going to be coming down the line. There's a lot of privacy issues, of course, involved with that. It's not tomorrow, but it will be here sooner or later, probably. As well as things that combine some of the locator devices, the GPS locator devices, and the fobs, where help I fall and I can't get up, where these fobs are now, where someone will be wearing them and they detect someone's fall based on the acceleration of forward movement and vertical movement as well, and there's no false alarms. All that stuff is going to be combined into one, and someone's going to monitor it from afar. That's what excites me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
But that doesn't get rid of home care. It absolutely does not.
Yeah.
Someone's still going to, if you want to stay independently and you can't get out of a wheelchair, that's not going to help you get out of a wheelchair.
Yeah, no, Chris, I think you're providing such a valuable service, and that is not going to go away. You need another human being sometimes.
And we'll be providing Chris's contact, his business, Always Best Care, and more information with links on everything that we've discussed as far as resources in the show notes of this episode. So, Chris, thank you so much for being with us on Alz In The Fam.
No, thank you very much for having me. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Thanks for listening to Alz In The Fam. In the fight against Alzheimer's and dementia, we are all family. Find us at Alz In The Fam on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and on our website, alzinthefampodcast.com. We appreciate you clicking that subscribe button on Apple, Google, Spotify, or whatever your favorite podcast catcher may be. Alzheimer's sucks, but we are in it together. We are Alz In The Family. Talk soon.